Last time we were on the subject, we ended on the note of Mother speaking of the work that she had to do with Sri Aurobindo. Somewhere in 1937, she made a note of all the things that she wanted to achieve in her life. A kind of conspectus of her objectives. Says, what I want to bring about in the material world upon the earth. And then she spells them out. It's highly interesting. And we can take the occasion of clarifying to ourselves the precise connotations of the terms she uses, drawing upon our knowledge of what Sri Aurobindo has said on these themes. First, that she wants to bring about is perfect consciousness. Now, what is consciousness? That's a question that comes up everywhere when you speak of consciousness. The simplest definition of consciousness is awareness. First, awareness of myself, and then awareness of all else. In the present state of things, you will agree that this awareness of most of us is very fragmentary. Somewhere, Sri Aurobindo speaks of this consciousness of the normal human being is something like a tip of an iceberg. One is conscious of a very, very little part of what goes on in oneself and in the world around. Most of us are hardly self-aware. We are not aware of what thoughts were passing through our minds 10 minutes ago. We are not aware of what reaction we are likely to give to a set of circumstances that may arise. It is as one pays attention to this aspect of the matter that consciousness begins to increase. First, we must want to be conscious. I have narrated times without number of that story in the Sanat Kumara episode in the Mahabharata, where when the king asks the divine sage, what is death? He says, it is unconsciousness. You live when you are conscious. To the extent that you are not conscious, you are not alive, and most are half dead. To follow a discipline of becoming conscious and more conscious in different areas, conscious in the mind, conscious in the heart of the various emotions that are forming, that are multiplying, the various impulses in the vital region that are trying to surge and overpower our reason, our heart's intimations, and the obstinate turns of the physical being. To be conscious of these, it requires a pointed discipline. And that discipline is part of yoga. To become aware and self-aware. She speaks of wanting to bring about a perfect consciousness, a long journey for the best of us. A perfect consciousness means there is no spot in us which is unconscious. Whether we are able to control all our movements or not is a different matter. But to be aware that this is so, this is that, this is that. Even when one is insincere, to be aware that one is insincere. The right thing to do is this, but I'm not able to do it, or I do not want to do it. To be aware, that itself is a step in becoming conscious. Today, those of you who have seen the Mahabharata episode would remember how when Karna says that he is becoming conscious, he is becoming aware of the great injustice he did to Draupadi, and to have witnessed without protest the dishonor done to her. He says, I am overcome with self-condemnation. I am aware of what I have done, and I have no face to go to their tent. It was at that time Krishna remarks, as if in an aside, smilingly, to recognize one's shortcomings is a door to liberation. That's what Mother has said elsewhere also, that a real repentance for a wrong that one may have done, the first part is to recognize that I have done wrong. But that's not complete. The second step is to make a resolution not to repeat it. To recognize and to will not to repeat it. That is real repentance. And that removes a good deal of the karmic consequences of the act. So in all ways, whether from the point of view of morals, psychology, intellect, a perfect consciousness, to be fully aware, something like a transparent awareness, that should be the desideratum. And that can be only, I may observe, an end product of a long process. It is not something that we can pursue exclusively. It is tied up with many other achievements, efforts at perfection. So the perfect consciousness is followed by integral knowledge, omniscience. Now, knowledge in this context does not mean knowledge that we get from books, knowledge that we imbibe from elders, knowledge that we draw from Shastras, scriptures. No. Sri Aurobindo speaks of 7 types of ignorance and 7 types of corrective knowledge. In a spiritual context, in the context of evolution of consciousness, knowledge is something more than mental knowledge. What are the 7 types of knowledge? Let us refresh ourselves of what we did when we were studying Life Divine some years ago. First is, we are not aware of the source of our existence. The parents are not the ultimate source. The parents also have another source. So what is the real source of all this universe, of all the movements that are going on? Surely, nobody thinks at this point of time that the universe is self-existent, self-created, but it has its origin elsewhere. That origin is in what is called the absolute in Western philosophy, in Brahman, in Indian Upanishadic philosophy. So this knowledge of the absolute, it is the irreducible ultimate. Beyond it, you can't conceive of anything. And even what the absolute is, you cannot describe in mental terms. It is called ineffable. It is the absolute, the supreme existence from which all else issues. We are here because it is there. And it is not something with which we are unrelated. There is a link. There is a connection. Every moment, whether we are aware of it or not, whether we recognize it or not, that link continues. To arrive at this knowledge of the absolute as our origin is the first type of knowledge. The second is around us, we see a continuous movement, change, what is called becoming. In philosophical terms, nothing is steady, nothing is stable, constantly in motion. Is that the whole truth? It is not. Supporting this movement of becoming, upholding all that is changing, there is something basic, something that is not affected, and that is the self. To acquire the knowledge of this self, which supports, upholds this cosmic existence, that is the second type of knowledge. Knowledge of the self. Third, we tend to organize our life around our little self, the surface self, the ego self, as if we are separate from all else. And we treat everything else as alien. What matters, the center of reference, is our ego, the individual surface self. This is called egoistic ignorance. And correcting that is knowledge of the world as one with one's deeper self. It is only at the level of the inner self, the Atman, that you can feel a true identity with the universe. Otherwise, it is a mental proposition. To feel and live in this knowledge of oneness with the universe, with the world, is possible when you arrive at the level of the self, true self. And this is called the corrective, a corrective knowledge of the egoistic ignorance. The fourth is we feel and behave as if we are prisoners of time. We come and go. We live and die. We are creatures of time. There is a complete ignorance of our potential within, of something which is eternal. We are lost in the round of the becoming of time. But the becoming of time is governed by something eternal, by something immortal. And that eternity is reflected or projected rather in our being, in the psychic entity. It is at the psychic level that we become conscious of an immortal presence to which change, death are irrelevant. To get knowledge of this psychic entity is called corrective of the temporal ignorance. Ignorance forged by the movement of time, by acquiring the knowledge of what is eternal in ourselves. The fifth is we are aware, as I mentioned at the outset, of only a fragment of our existence. We know the sensational mind, the little thought mind, we know the emotions that throw themselves out everywhere at all levels of the being. We are confined to a small corner. If we can make an effort to direct our gaze within, or if, as Sri Aurobindo describes in Savitri, suddenly an inner door opens, we become conscious and are aghast at the immensity of the being, of existence within ourselves. There is the large area of subliminal, what is subconscient, what is intraconscient, what is superconscient. All these, they are phrases to us. And our outer existence, surface existence, is only a small point projected by this immensity on the material plane. This ignorance of our larger being is called the psychological ignorance. And it is corrected only when we become aware of our inner and greater existence. That is the fifth kind of knowledge that we have to arrive at. And then what is called the constitutional ignorance. We really do not know what forces drive us to speak, to think, to act as we do on many occasions. We just say we do not know why we did it. We come to know only by the results of what is moving us. The large area of forces preparing for expression within ourselves, we are not aware. Knowledge of our mind, life and body, in their true mutual interrelation, that is a must. At the moment, our mind is different, the heart thinks differently, the vital goes on its own, and the body is obstinate and it doesn't obey anybody, any of these. So they are all as if separate entities. To become conscious that our mind, life, body are one organism, a complex, and find their true relation, interdependence, interaction, that is the constitutional ignorance, to be corrected by a fuller knowledge of the inner working of our faculties. As a result of all these types of compelling ignorance, we have what is called practical ignorance. Practical ignorance is error in understanding, wrong emotions, misdirected energies, obstinacies of the body, a certain blindness in the body. Now all these are results of disequilibrium on other levels. We go wrong, act wrong, and feel wrong. In fact, we act out of focus, right focus, because there are so many types of ignorance acting upon us. To get that knowledge, how to coordinate the various faculties within ourselves and how to relate ourselves to external world, not only the objective world but even the subjective worlds of everybody. How to do that? That also comes by effort, experience, and this knowledge of true use of our faculties, knowledge of the true harmony between ourselves and others, within ourselves. That is the seventh type of knowledge. Now it is these 7 types of knowledge which have to be built up, which have to be integrated, and to train the mind to enlarge itself, to deepen itself, and be open to the action of these 7 types of knowledge, leads to what she calls the integral knowledge, omniscience. Omniscience. Sri Aurobindo explains humorously, in answer to a question of a disciple who asked whether mother is omniscient. Sri Aurobindo replied, she is when she wants to be. She can know anything when she wants to know. She may not be interested in what Lloyd George had for his breakfast this morning. But if she wants, she can know. So omniscience does not mean a constant operative knowledge of everything that goes on. It means the capacity of consciousness to hold and to grasp what it wants to know. That is omniscience. Otherwise, there are 1,000 and 1,000,000 small details which it is not worth knowing. So that is omniscience. It does not mean that a person who is omniscient or God who is omniscient is aware in an active manner of every little movement that goes on around or within us. Point is, the awareness can be done, can be had if one wants. And the third is power, invincible, irresistible, ineluctable. That is, there is a power in cosmic existence which cannot be resisted. At our human level, even at the higher levels of the vital planes or the mental planes, there are powers and powers. Even the divine power takes account of the other rights of other powers and does not act in its full capacity. But the supreme divine power, or the power of truth consciousness alone, is invincible. Till that power is summoned and made active, every other power has a certain inadequacy because of the prevailing pull of the inconscient and its brood of ignorance, falsehood, incompleteness. Because of that, whatever power, spiritual power, mental power, vital power is brought into operation, it fails to achieve the objective. There is a lack. It is only the power of truth consciousness that is omnipotent. And the power of truth consciousness, we must remember, is not something like an instrument that is handled by the consciousness. Sri Aurobindo always puts a hyphen, consciousness force, conscious power. That means consciousness as power. It is consciousness formulating itself as power. So unless your consciousness is perfect, the power that you wield cannot be perfect. So each one is tied up with something else. We started with perfect consciousness, discussed the integral knowledge, and third, we have come to power invincible, irresistible, ineluctable, omnipotence. All through their literature and writings and talks, our teachers have emphasized that the only power that is omnipotent and can function without failure, without shortcoming, is the supramental power, the power of truth consciousness, which is not yet operative in earth existence. But that is there, it is possible, it is an ideal, and it is certain. We will deal with the other items when we meet next.